Now we'll get to Dirk Perrefort and the first question to John McKinney. I just want to remind the candidates that Bonnie is keeping track of you out here on your timing. You have 2 minutes to answer your question, and the other candidates have 1 minute to comment. Dirk, go ahead.
Senator McKinney, the Victim Privacy Task Force recently recommended continued restrictions on the state's freedom of information laws that put the burden of proof on citizens to prove why 9/11 tapes and crime scene photos should be released, rather than the government being required to argue as to why they shouldn't be. Do you support these changes that call for some of the most dramatic changes to the state's FOI laws in the past 3 decades?
Thank you for the question, Dirk. And there are a couple of people in the audience who I believe served on that task force. There are parts of the recommendations I do support and parts I don't, so let me be very clear with you. First and foremost, I do believe that if a minor has been murdered in the state of Connecticut, that their picture should be free from the public and not subject to our Freedom of Information Act. We dealt with the horrific tragedy of Newtown. As many of you may know, I represent the town of Newtown. And I don't think there's anything for the public to gain by releasing the photos of those dead children. So I'm all foursquare for protecting those pictures, unless there is a need for public safety or for a state's attorney's office in prosecuting the crime. With respect to 911 tapes, I don't think those should be exempt from our FOIA laws. I think they can provide a service. There may be a part of a 911 tape that can be put into a transcript and not released if it's the sounds of somebody being murdered, for example. But I would draw the line there. There is no public need to see the photos of young children who've been murdered. The 911 tapes can be useful.
We'll now turn to the other candidates if they have any comments. Tony, you're first.
Thank you for the question. I think this is one of the more difficult issues that we've probably had to deal with, because public information, the freedom of the press, is one of the most important areas of our government that keeps our liberties free. I think they should be protected at all costs. This was a very unusual event. There was some good rationale behind keeping those photographs by not adding to the pain and suffering of families that have already suffered so much. But I would be very, very reluctant to expand that any further because the freedom of the press, the ability to get information out, could help us in cases that are unknown to us in the future. And it is one of the singular reasons that really help to protect our freedoms, and that is the freedom of the press. So I would not support any further incursion on that.
We'll make it work.
That's an introduction to you, Mark.
Okay. Look, I have serious concerns about any restrictions in the FOI law. I think it's served us well over the many years. As somebody that lives about 15 minutes to Sandy Hook School, you know, I get the challenge with the pictures, and certainly I don't think they should be out in the public domain, and nobody really needs to see what happened there. I think we can all imagine what the horror that took place there. But I will tell you that this administration, notwithstanding this issue, has made a career out of hiding things from the public. This is an administration that has used private emails to conduct public business all the time right underneath our noses. They have a history of trying to hide things on you, and I think we have to be very careful by giving them any more latitude not to have things out in full sunlight for the public to understand and to read.
Joe, you're up.
Are we on? Dirk, thank you. I agree. I concur with most of my colleagues here. The 911 tapes should be open. Possibly a moratorium for so many years would have been a better idea, especially since the tragedy happened in Sandy Hook and people didn't want that coming out right away. But again, I have reservations about private emails. Just last week I put a call in and have a meeting with the Freedom of Information Commission, one of their educators. I'm going to be actually requesting information from Governor Malloy, his staff, Royalka Grossa, everyone from Sandy Hook forward, private emails being used, and the Current has already done a piece on this. When lobbyists, special interests, can communicate with private emails from your elected officials or appointed people, who is writing our laws? This is probably the bigger question that's not asked right now, but freedom of information, I'll be more on the trail when I find out more. We want to come out this with a full political assault where it's due. And when I'm more informed from the commission, then we'll let you all know. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now proceed to Julian Morrow asking a question of Mark Boughton.
Education reforms have been a cornerstone of the state legislature for the past 2 sessions. Now Common Core changes to K through 12 schools are being changed, the rollout's being delayed. What other changes to the lower education system should be in place, and how would you go about implementing them?
Well, certainly I agree with the initiative at preschool education. I think it's important that we intervene as quickly as possible and understand that our students are ready to learn and ready to go to work when they enter kindergarten. In Danbury, we've been successful at expanding opportunities for pre-K education. We've also rolled out all-day kindergarten for all of our students. So I get that, and I think it's all about good outcomes. But I'm going to tell you that I have concerns about the issue of Common Core, specifically linking it to teacher evaluations. As a former teacher myself, somebody who spent 14 years in the public school system, still a certified teacher even today, the measurement of learning is not always on a standardized test. It's more about building the whole student and building a good person when they leave your local high school. We're losing that in education, and that's a problem. And at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to build widgets or do we want to build people? Because I want to build good people, people that are ready to participate in our democracy, people that can fill out a job application, and people that can be successful in a global economy. And I also tell you that anytime we have a policy driven from the top down, like Common Core, watch out. Be very, very aware. Remember, this is an administration that gave you Obamacare and the disaster that we're putting up with right now. It never works when it's top down. We need to go to our Board of Educations, our practitioners, our teachers, and our parents, engage them in the kind of learning outcomes they want their children to have, and then we'll have students that are ready to participate in our democracy and our economy.
Senator McKinnon, you're up.
Listen, one-size-fits-all mandates from big government don't work. It didn't work with No Child Left Behind, and it's not working with the Common Core. That's why I came out and called for the resignation of Commissioner Pryor. This administration has failed in implementing Common Core. This administration has taken a tactic that they've always taken, that they know better for you than you know for your own children. That's not the administration I will bring as your next governor. Look, we need to work with our teachers, we need to work with our administrators. My youngest is in 8th grade public schools in Fairfield, and I've heard from her and her teachers since the beginning of the year how bad the implementation of Common Core and the teacher evaluations was by this administration, and they didn't listen. It took an election year political maneuver for Governor Malloy to finally listen. If we work with our teachers and we work with our administrators and our parents, that's how we can help our teachers and students perform better.
Senator Boucher? Care to comment?
Let's try this. Okay. Education has always been a top priority in Connecticut. It has been my top priority and the single reason that I even got into public service to begin with, because I came here from another country not speaking a word of English, and great public schools teachers helped me to succeed. I have to say that there are many more things that we can do in addition to some of the things that were done. Some would say not well, and they're right about that. In fact, we should focus on schools that are failing and intervene there and leave successful schools alone and leave it up to them with regards to teacher evaluations, to curriculum, and other mandates that currently are on there. However, we can do more. We should be looking at repairing the backbone of our educational system, which is literacy. We need to double down on literacy. We should consider a 7-hour school day. Maybe we need to go to a 200-day school year and reallocate funding as necessary, because all children, regardless of their social economic circumstances, have a better prospect of succeeding if they can read, and read by the 4th grade. We have lots of other great ideas that I'd love to talk to you further as we proceed during this evening. Thank you.
Joe Visconti?
Wow. Common Core, February 22nd, Portland Senior Center, 12 noon. There's a statewide seminar on Common Core. I've been in the race 10 months. Countless parents and teachers have been contacting me on Facebook directly and through messages about Common Core. There's a lot to talk about, not to demonize just one program, but I coined the term in West Hartford, education cartel. Because it's not the teachers, and the teachers are fine, like the doctors are coming out now saying enough is enough coming down from the federal bureaucracy and the state education. It's time the teachers teach, the parents are involved, Common Core erodes that, and there's so much more in 1 minute, can't hit it all. But come to the seminar. I will be live streaming it also through my website, February 22nd. Portland Senior Center. So much more. This will decide, one of the deciding factors for the race is Common Core and the Malloy administration's failure, especially Google Chromebook that John Pelto just spoke about, and how the data mining of your students will occur. Very powerful. This is volcanic, and all of us will be a lot more ahead of the curve soon on just from the parents and the teachers what they say. That's more important than what we say here today. Thank you.
Ben Duty, a question for Tony Bosch.
A two-part question. How would you assess the leadership qualities of the other candidates on this stage? And what about your own leadership experience makes you uniquely qualified to be governor?
Well, first of all, I think the Republican Party is very, very fortunate to have terrific candidates before you. Some of the things that differentiate me is 30 years of experience both in managing large organizations and working in the private sector. I helped to build and run 1,000-room hotels, worked for General Electric and Jack Welch, and had small businesses of my own, and currently work in an investment firm, have an MBA, Series 7 and 63. But additionally, during that entire time, I have served in local government, both on boards of education, boards of selectmen, State Board of Education, in the House and in the Senate, and over those years negotiated a number of union contracts and brought good contracts to the table, because negotiation is going to be key in order to bring down the cost of government here in Connecticut and be able to reduce taxes. And I think that negotiations is an art form.